Hello everybody, it's Emma and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about something a little bit of a sensitive topic, maybe a little even taboo. So I've been wanting to talk about this for a really long time, but especially since I found Sarah Todd Hammer on YouTube. She is a disability advocate slash influencer, and she made a really interesting Instagram post, maybe even YouTube video about eco-ableism and about how many disabled people actually rely on plastic straws. So I wanted to touch on that from an environmentalist point of view, as well as someone who thinks that zero waste should be for everyone. So let's dive into that. A couple disclaimers: I'm really sorry for the mess. We are in the middle of moving, so my studio is a mess, this room is a mess, and I just really need to get some content knocked out. Disclaimer 2, if I talk a little bit too fast for you, you can follow the blog post linked down below. It is just the script of this video, or you can just speed up this video using the gear icon right down here. First off, I want to touch on that not all plastic is bad. Single-use plastic is what's really bad, and unnecessary single-use plastic is what's bad. Necessary single-use plastic does exist. I'm sure we can all think of something that is in our life that is necessary single-use plastic, whether that be pill containers, plastic straws for some, plastic water. Depending on where you live, you might not have access to tap water that's clean. We all have that one thing that we rely on that is single-use plastic. So I think that's something we need to keep in mind throughout this video. First, let's talk about what eco-ableism is. So it's a form of ableism, which, if you don't know that term, it basically means that this world is designed for able-bodied people, and people with disabilities who aren't able, or people who aren't able-bodied, have a really hard time getting around because of it. Think of things like buildings that don't have a ramp. People with a wheelchair can't get up there. This video, if someone is deaf watching this video and I didn't have the blog post or subtitles, they couldn't read along. The blog post, people couldn't read along if they're blind. There are so many different things in this world that are tailored to able-bodied people that not able-bodied people can't use. We should be striving to tailor this world for everybody. I think we can start doing that within the zero waste movement by providing things like this video and other resources to people who are not able-bodied, so that everybody can participate in this movement and just in the world in general. So eco-ableism is similar to just regular old ableism, except for it's targeted in the zero waste movement. It's things like trying to ban straws even though people rely on straws to live. It's things like single-use plastic in the produce aisle, like with all the pre-cut fruit and veggies, even though people rely on those products to literally live. And other things too, it's trying to ban cars when disabled people sometimes rely on cars. Something else that I already briefly touched on is that not all plastic is bad. So yes, sometimes plastic can be bad, specifically single-use plastic, but specifically when we don't need it. Like I already mentioned, we all have that one, maybe even more single-use products, whether that be plastic, metal, glass, or paper, or anything that we rely on to function, to live, to get our job done, and stuff like that. For example, the vitamins I take come in plastic. A lot of my produce comes in plastic because I live in Japan right now, where it's very hard to avoid plastic on your produce. Some people, it might be their prescription medicine. Some people, it might be plastic straws. It just depends for every single person. I really don't think there's any zero waster out there who doesn't rely on some sort of single-use plastic, even if that is just stickers on their bananas. So yes, we do need to reduce what we can. It's still really important that those who are able-bodied reduce their consumption of single-use plastic straws, reduce their consumption of single-use plastic bags, but we shouldn't be trying to ban these items. And that's simply because people rely on them. I think this is something that we can let supply and demand take care of, and what I mean is those of us who can, we give up using single-use plastic straws. Therefore, the manufacturers create less and less and less single-use plastic straws until they're only making enough for the people who need them, and those of us who don't need them aren't contributing to the overconsumption of them. So overconsumption is still a big issue when it comes to single-use things, but regular consumption isn't bad on any level. But still, with plastic, we do need to reduce our consumption where we can, but not ban these life-sustaining products. So like I already also touched on, people rely on plastic, but why? That's because plastic is honestly a really good invention. You probably won't catch a bunch of zero wasters saying that. Plastic was a really good invention when used in moderation, and that's because it's light, it's durable, and it's accessible. It's so cheap as well. There are a lot of benefits to plastic, but we really exploited that and it just kind of blew up, and now we're facing the consequences. But people still rely on plastic because it's still a really good invention. Think inhalers, EpiPens, saline bags. There's so many medical devices that are made out of plastic that are so life-saving and life-sustaining. But even things like plastic straws. This is something that Sarah talks about a lot, and that is working to not ban plastic straws because they are the perfect straw for disabled people. They are bendable, they don't get too hot or too cold, and they are very easy to use. Paper straws get too soggy. Glass and metal straws both get too hot and too cold and could end up injuring somebody. Glass and bamboo straws could end up shattering, which could also injure somebody, not just disabled people, but all people. So really the perfect straw is a plastic one. Now there might be like a good silicone option out there that is bendable and reusable. Maybe people could look into that, but even then that might still not be the best option. So it really just depends on everybody's life circumstances, with the straws at least. And same with that pre-cut fruit I already touched on. Some people actually rely on this to live. The pre-cut fruit, pre-cut veggies, pre-packaged portions of things. It might seem ridiculous, you know, for me to go out and buy this stuff, because it is wasteful for me to do it, but some people rely on this stuff. What I mean is people with tremors, people who are paralyzed. I mean, heck, even people who aren't in the mental state to prepare their own food. This makes such an easy grab and go, let me get some nutrients in my body snack. So that's, again, one of those things that we as able-bodied people can avoid to reduce the supply and demand and leave those products there for people who actually need them. And again, not try to ban them. So upon doing my research, I stumbled across something I had never really heard of in the eco-ableism world, and that is climate change and disability. I'm going to leave this full article linked below by Elizabeth Wright. It is very well written, and she is disabled herself, but is also part of the zero waste movement. So it's really interesting to get to see her perspective on this, and she touched a lot on climate change and disability. I'm just going to touch on it briefly here because it is in short. We need to talk about how disabled people are at a very high risk from suffering from natural disasters, forest fires, hurricanes, earthquakes, snowstorms, flooding, and all sorts of things that are climate-related disasters. These people are at a very high risk for being injured, stranded, and so forth, because it is harder for them sometimes to move, see, drive, get away. They're among some of the most vulnerable people during these situations, and these events are becoming more and more common as climate change intensifies. It is actually estimated that 37.5% of the world lives with some sort of disability. That is not a small percentage. That's why I'm just so mind blown at how disabled people are forgotten when it comes to making climate related change. Why are their voices not being heard? It is such a big portion of the population, and that's really a big issue. So we need to work together to give disabled people a voice when it comes to making change and just zero waste in general. And this all really culminates into making zero waste intersectional. If you're unfamiliar with what that means, that basically means making zero waste accessible to everyone and including everyone in decisions. All things from race, gender, age, disabled, all sorts of categories. Everyone needs to be included when it comes to making these changes, because if they're excluded, we don't think about them. And by we, I mean like lawmakers. So for example, we have like old white men in Congress who are making these climate change related changes. They are not listening to people of color who are affected by environmental racism. They're not listening to disabled people who are affected by eco-ableism. They're not listening to indigenous people who are affected by oil spills. There are so many people who they're not listening to, and their voices are just not being heard when it comes to eco changes. Most changes in general, but for this video, eco changes. So those of us who do have a voice and are willing to share, we need to be sharing their stories, getting this news out there, because like I said, this was not something that I was thinking about when I first went zero waste, but now it's something I really want to push forward, is giving a voice to those who don't have one, who might not have a platform, who might have a platform but might not be getting heard. So I encourage you guys to do the same. In summary, we need to consider that single-use plastic is not always bad. We do need to reduce our consumption. Overconsumption is always a problem, but we shouldn't be banning life-sustaining resources, even if that is plastic. We need to understand that we can't have climate justice without racial justice. We can't have climate justice without including everybody. And ultimately, trying to ban straws is a small drop in the ocean of climate-related issues. There are so many things like trying to pressure companies into reducing their fossil fuel intake, pressuring companies into paying employees fairly, pressuring companies into using more sustainable materials, and so forth. There are so many bigger issues out there than plastic straws. And I learned a lot about the plastic pollution crisis in Seaspiracy, a really good documentary, by the way, and that most of the pollution in the ocean is fishing gear. Straws make up, I think it was like less than 1% of ocean waste. So why are we focusing on straws when there are so many bigger fish to fry? We can't leave these people behind by banning straws and banning cars and banning other single-use plastic when they rely on it to live. We need to start focusing on making this world accommodatable. Is that a word? We need to start accommodating all sorts of people and not just our able-bodied self. We must all work together no matter our race, religion, age, able-bodied or not. We all need to work together. And then those of us who are able-bodied, we need to amplify their voices. Those of us who are not people of color, we need to amplify their voices. We need to make changes that are going to save the planet, yes, but also include everyone along the way. If we leave disabled people behind, that's a big issue. If we leave people of color behind, that's a big issue. We need to include everybody in these changes. Our small changes do have a big impact. My choice to not use single-use straws and single-use bags does have a big impact. But again, that's because I have the choice. I am able to live without these products, meaning we shouldn't ban them. So yes, let's still focus on these small areas because they are easy to accomplish as an individual, reducing my consumption of these things, but let's focus on the big issue too. Let's write to our leaders, write to our policymakers, call them, email them, whatever it may be. Pressure companies. We can do all of this stuff without banning straws, without banning stuff that people rely on to live. I guess I just try to think of if I were in a situation where I didn't have clean water coming from my faucet, I would need to buy plastic water bottles. How hard would it be to buy plastic water bottles if someone banned them? Just like some people rely on straws in order to drink water, how are they going to drink water if we ban these things? In conclusion, let's keep others in mind, let's fight for the planet, but let's do so by not leaving others behind. And always try to put yourselves in other people's shoes so that we can better understand these situations and why these things shouldn't be banned completely. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed this video. I hope that this information was valuable and that my ugly setup today was not too much of a hindrance. I appreciate your time and learning about this subject. This was something that has always been on my mind for the last few months, and I hope that it remains on my mind and your minds as well as we move forward in the zero waste movement. Let's try to make the zero waste movement more accessible to everybody. That's all I have for this video. If you're new here, don't forget to hit subscribe. I post new content every Thursday Japan Standard Time, which is Wednesday in the US, though it's going to be changing a little bit soon as I head back to the US myself. And I post some videos on Mondays, just kind of depends, but definitely stay tuned for those Thursday uploads, all along the lines of practical sustainability, which is free, easy, and fun ways to live low waste. Again, thank you for watching, especially if you made it all the way to the end. I really appreciate your time. And until next time, remember that these small changes you make have a big impact in the long run. Bye, guys. Please don't come in my house. There's a butterfly. But we shouldn't be banning life-sustaining resources. I don't know. And